They say the last memory of someone isn't their smile, it's the words they leave behind. For the beloved Danielle Spencer, the iconic D from What's Happening, her parting words to her co-stars were pure chills. In her final moments with the people she shared years of laughter and chaos with, Danielle didn't simply wave goodbye. She delivered a haunting message that exposed decades of hurt, betrayal, and secrets no one dared whisper until now. Danielle Spencer wasn't just a sitcom star. She was a staple of our childhoods, the sharp, no-nonsense little sister who stole every scene on What's Happening. Week after week, she brought joy to millions, yet behind the giggles, her life was stitched with tragedy, resilience, and a cast bond pushed to unimaginable limits. In this video, we're diving deep into the truth behind Danielle's final exchange with her co-stars, a conversation listeners describe as an emotional cocktail of love, disappointment, and closure. We'll relive the peaks and valleys of her career, the private struggles, and the moments that defined the woman beyond the laugh track. The battles she faced in silence, the invisible weight of Hollywood pressures, all shaped her final moments, with those who knew her inside out. And believe me, the reality cuts far deeper than any headline dares to claim. Her parting words weren't just touching. They peeled back layers of hidden set secrets, fractured friendships, and the ruthless price of fame no one dares to discuss. So strap in, because what comes next will make you see Danielle Spencer in a whole new light. Her story kicks off almost like a Hollywood screenplay, but this was her real life. Born June 24, 1965, in Trenton, New Jersey, Danielle grew up in a home where education, discipline, and hard work ruled. Her father, actor Tim P. Spencer, was deeply entrenched in show business, while her mother, a woman of unwavering grace and determination, instilled in Danielle a fierce sense of self. But childhood wasn't all spotlights and perks. Her family endured hurdles, including her parents' separation, forcing Danielle to navigate two very different worlds. One foot planted in ordinary struggles, the other dazzled by Hollywood's bright promises. Danielle's breakthrough arrived in the mid-1970s when producers of the new sitcom, What's Happening, were hunting for a young actress to play Dee Thomas, the sharp-tongued little sister of the main character, Raj. At just 11 years old, Danielle Spencer nailed the audition, bringing a natural comedic timing and bold charm that made her impossible to forget. She wasn't merely reciting lines, she embodied the role. Her razor-sharp wit and deadpan delivery perfectly balanced the show's warmth, and soon Dee became a fan favorite across America. Audiences didn't just watch for the wholesome moments. They tuned in for Dee's unforgettable one-liners that consistently stole the spotlight. But stardom came with its own trials. As a child actress in the 1970s, Danielle was thrown into grueling production schedules, relentless media scrutiny, and the silent expectation of a flawless public persona. While other kids attended school dances and played on playgrounds, Danielle was memorizing scripts, enduring hot studio lights, and navigating press interviews before hitting her teens. Off-camera, the cast became a surrogate family. She forged a deep, lasting connection with co-stars Ernest Thomas, Raj Haywood, Dwayne Nelson, and Fred Berry, Rerun. They protected her like older brothers, always hovering but somehow loving. Yet, like any family, sparks flew. Arguments erupted, lessons were learned, and moments lingered far longer than anyone expected. At just 11, Danielle Spencer couldn't have imagined that this sitcom wouldn't just catapult her career, but also entangle her in relationships that would haunt her decades later, ultimately leading to those chilling final words. Because while viewers saw infectious laughter and on-screen charm, the truth behind the cameras was tangled and raw. The tiny seeds of secrets Danielle would eventually spill to her co-stars were already planted in those first chaotic days. And trust me, it only gets juicier from here. When the cameras stopped rolling, her life twisted into paths that shocked even her closest friends. Back in 1979, Danielle was a teenager navigating a world of glitz far beyond her years. For many child stars, wrapping up a hit show is both freedom and curse. Freedom from the relentless spotlight, but a curse as Hollywood rarely welcomes kids into grown-up roles. For Danielle, the sword cut both ways. She adored acting, yet longed for grounding, identity, and a life beyond the fame. Outside the laughter, outside Dee, she was just a girl searching for herself. With the original show behind her, Danielle Spencer shocked fans by putting education first instead of diving headlong into Hollywood's next big thing. Fame wasn't her goal. Normalcy was. But of course, Tinseltown wasn't done dangling its glitter in front of her. By 1985, producers resurrected the beloved sitcom with a sequel, What's Happening Now, and Danielle stepped back into Dee's shoes. This time as a college student. Fans squealed at seeing the grown-up version of the girl they once adored, and Danielle enjoyed a resurgence in the spotlight. Yet along with the attention came old pressures, marathon shoots, endless publicity, and constant comparisons to the child star she'd been. Her co-stars were still like family, but fame had changed them, and life had altered the dynamics between them. Beyond the cameras, Danielle wrestled with struggles no audience would ever glimpse. When the sequel ended in 1988, she made a daring choice: walk away from acting entirely. Instead, she chased a lifelong dream of veterinary medicine, a passion she'd quietly held since childhood. Hollywood was stunned, but Danielle's move screamed independence. She was determined to carve a life that belonged to her, not the spotlight. She went on to graduate from Tuskegee University School of Veterinary Medicine, building a thriving career as a veterinarian. Yet even as her professional life soared, personal storms were brewing. In 2004, Danielle Spencer suffered a serious car accident that left her with a spinal cord injury, bringing partial paralysis and a long, grueling road to recovery. The physical pain was brutal, but the emotional toll ran just as deep. Through sheer grit, the same fierce determination that carried her through child stardom, she fought back. Friends and former co-stars admired her strength, yet those closest knew the accident had etched more than scars. It had reshaped her view of life. Years later, in interviews, Danielle admitted the ordeal forced her to re-examine relationships, career decisions, and her own mortality. She reflected on the people she'd grown up with on set, the shared moments, and the decades of unresolved tension simmering beneath the laughter. Though she eventually returned to her veterinary practice, the emotional shadows lingered. It was in this period of deep reflection that she began composing the words she would eventually deliver to her co-stars, words that would expose her true feelings about their tangled past. But before those revelations could unfold, another tragedy struck, one that thrust her and the cast back together under circumstances no one had ever wanted. For years, Danielle Spencer kept a safe distance from the relentless glare of fame, pouring herself into her veterinary career and personal life. Yet no matter how full her schedule, the ties to her What's Happening family never completely faded. Over the years, the cast would reunite for conventions, nostalgic specials, and occasional interviews, reminding fans of the magic they once conjured together. But behind the smiles and staged camaraderie, there was always an undercurrent, a cocktail of nostalgia and silent tension. Bonds were real, but so were unspoken resentments. Years of disagreements and unresolved emotions lingered just beneath the surface. The true turning point came in 2003 with the sudden death of Fred Berry, taken by health complications. His passing shocked both cast and fans. Fred had been larger than life on and off screen, and his absence left a void that couldn't be filled. Danielle, alongside Ernest Thomas and Haywood Nelson, attended his memorial, where she reportedly grew more reflective than ever. Sources reveal she stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, watching old photos of Fred flash on a big screen, her face caught between grief and contemplation. Seeing herself and her co-stars frozen in youth unleashed a flood of memories, both sweet and painfully bittersweet. In that quiet, many say, Danielle finally grasped just how fleeting their time together truly. They had all been so young once, with entire futures stretching before them. But time had passed, and the stark realities of aging, illness, and mortality were unavoidable. In the years after Fred Berry's death, Danielle Spencer faced her own battles. Multiple surgeries for her spinal cord injury were just the beginning. Later, a life-altering breast cancer diagnosis tested her resilience like never before. The fight was brutal. Surgeries, treatments, and emotional exhaustion. But once again, she confronted it with unshakable courage. During recovery, Danielle reconnected with her co-stars through calls and visits, moments that mixed joy with old pain. Because there were truths she had never voiced, how she felt as a child on set, how fame had warped their relationships, and her gratitude for the times they had genuinely supported her. By the late 2010s, her perspective had transformed. She no longer saw the point in holding back or masking her emotions. Near-death experiences, life-altering injuries, and serious illness had taught her that some words could not remain unsaid. So, when another reunion was arranged, smaller, intimate, far from the cameras, Danielle arrived ready. She wasn't there to pose for photos or indulge nostalgia. She was there to speak her truth, to ensure nothing remained unspoken about her complicated, powerful bond with the people she had grown up with on screen. Those closest to Danielle Spencer say she rehearsed her words endlessly in her mind, crafting them to be both raw and heartfelt. She didn't know if it would be the last time she saw everyone together, but something deep inside urged her to speak as if it were. What she ultimately said that day didn't just surprise her co-stars, it visibly shook them. But before we get to those unforgettable words, you need to grasp the decades of personal pain Danielle carried. Pain the public never glimpsed. 2. Understand the gravity of her final message. We must rewind and look at the losses that shaped her. Fans only saw a cheerful young actress on screen, but behind the smile was a childhood marked by heartbreak. At just 5 years old, Danielle endured the devastating loss of her father, actor Tim P. Spencer, in a car accident, a tragedy that left a void she often called impossible to fill. Though her mother raised her with love and unwavering determination, the absence of her father was a constant ache, growing heavier as she entered her teens. That early loss, paired with the relentless pressures of child stardom, brewed a storm of emotions she had no choice but to hide. Hollywood, for all its glitter, was a lonely place, and Danielle bore that isolation in silence, long before her final words would make anyone truly understand the depth of her journey. Danielle Spencer was often treated differently: young, female, outspoken. A combination that made Hollywood notice her sass but sometimes ignore her voice. Her character Dee was celebrated for quick wit and charm, yet off-camera, Danielle frequently felt unheard. She later admitted there were times she felt sidelined, overlooked compared to her male co-stars. And while genuine bonds existed among the cast, tensions simmered, disagreements over pay, creative choices, and the unequal treatment child actors endured in that era. What's happening now? Wrapped in the late 1980s, Danielle thought she could move on. But leaving acting also meant leaving unresolved emotions behind. She had never fully expressed how certain on-set moments had hurt her, how Hollywood had shaped her childhood in ways she couldn't undo, and how abandoned she sometimes felt once the cameras stopped rolling. For years, she buried these feelings under her new identity as a veterinarian, pouring herself into her work with compassion and precision, finding fulfillment far from Hollywood's glitter. Yet the memories of youth, both beautiful and painful, lingered. Then life forced her to confront the past head-on. The 2004 car accident nearly stole her mobility, and recovery was as emotionally devastating as it was physically grueling. She had to navigate pain, limitations, and the brutal reminder that life can pivot in an instant. Years later, a breast cancer diagnosis layered on even more struggle. During these dark chapters, Danielle reflected on those who had shaped her journey, like Ernest Thomas, who had often watched over her like a protective big brother, and she thought of Haywood Nelson, whose quiet kindness had always meant more than words could say. She remembered Fred Berry, with his booming laugh and unforgettable energy, and how his sudden death had left countless words unspoken. But alongside the fond memories were the times she felt dismissed, overlooked, or misunderstood. Deep loneliness had shadowed her for years, moments her co-stars never knew because she had never fully opened up. The little girl who had once been Dee had grown into a woman weighed down by decades of silence, and that silence pressed harder as she faced her own mortality. Danielle Spencer knew that if she left this world without speaking her truth, regret would haunt her forever. In the months leading up to the reunion, she prepared meticulously. Friends said she filled journals with her feelings, some raw and painful, others brimming with gratitude. She wasn't planning a confrontation or to reopen old wounds. She simply wanted her co-stars to know the real Danielle, the one carrying love and hurt, pride and disappointment, forgiveness and longing. By the time she finally sat with them, she had reached clarity. She knew exactly what needed to be said, words that would silence the room. The reunion wasn't staged on a set or at a Hollywood gala. It was a quiet, private room. No cameras, no reporters, just Danielle and the surviving members of her What's Happening family. They had gathered for a casual meal, laughs about old times, nothing more. But Danielle had a weightier purpose. She appeared thinner, frailer than the bubbly girl they remembered, her smile warm but her eyes carrying a depth that demanded attention. She waited until the plates were cleared and conversation died down. Then she began softly. "I've been holding on to some things for a long time. Stroll down memory lane." Danielle Spencer drew a deep breath and began speaking from a place she had kept locked away for decades. She started with gratitude. She told Ernest Thomas how deeply she appreciated the way he had looked out for her on set, how his kindness during her most awkward years had meant more than he knew. She thanked Haywood Nelson for being a gentle presence, someone who never made her feel lesser, even when the industry did. With a bittersweet smile, she spoke of Fred Berry, wishing she had told him in life how his laughter had carried her through long, grueling filming days. Then her tone shifted. She spoke candidly about the isolation of being a child actress, the nights spent crying in her dressing room, missing her father, feeling unheard. She admitted moments when she felt like just the kid on set, not an equal member of a team whose character was adored by millions. "You all were my family," she said, voice catching. "But sometimes I felt invisible, and I never said that out loud because I didn't want to ruin what we had. Carrying it around hurt." Her co-stars listened, some with tears glistening, no one interrupting. Danielle's words were both a release and a gift, truth wrapped in love. Then came the part that would linger forever. "If this is the last time we're all in the same room, I want you to know I love you. I forgive the moments that hurt me, and I hope you forgive me for the times I pulled away. We made something together that will outlive all of us. That's the gift. That's the legacy." Silence filled the room after she finished. Some reached for her hands. Others could only nod, their throats too tight for words. Danielle Spencer had finally released decades of unspoken feelings. In doing so, she gave her co-stars a rare sense of closure, something almost unheard of in this business. In the months that followed, her health declined, and she passed away surrounded by loved ones, her reunion words echoing in the hearts of those she cherished. Ernest Thomas later recalled, in an interview, his voice breaking, "She told us everything she needed to. She left nothing unsaid." That perhaps is the most powerful part of her story. Danielle's last words weren't about regret. They were about release, healing, and finally speaking the truth to the people who mattered most. Fans will forever remember Dee, the witty, confident little sister who could outsmart anyone. But those who knew her best will remember her courage, the bravery it took to confront her past, speak her truth, and leave behind not just memories, but understanding. In the end, her true gift wasn't her role on television. It was reminding us it's never too late to speak from the heart. Danielle Spencer's story is a lesson that the people who make us laugh often carry battles we can't see. Her final words to her co-stars were for all of us. Cherish the time you have and never leave important words unsaid. If Danielle's story moved you, share this video to honor her legacy, not just as Dee from What's Happening, but as a woman of strength, honesty, and grace. And if there's someone in your life you need to speak to, don't wait. Pick up the phone today. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more behind the headline stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.